All right. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Market Capping. Today we have Sam from Frax Finance. We're about to bring him up, but before we bring him up, we're just going to roll our intro video. So, all eyes on screen, let's roll the thing.
GM Anon, welcome to today's episode of Market Capping. Before we begin, I just wanted to remind you that I'm not your mom, and nor are any of the speakers on this show. Nothing you hear today is financial advice. You should be a big kid now. Make your own decisions, do your own research, and assume every crypto coin you buy will result in complete losses. If you ever plan on holding anyone other than yourself responsible for your choices, please navigate to the top of your browser window where you'll find the friendly red close button. And now, let the episode begin.
Boom. All right. There's the intro and welcome. So, I think everyone's here. Let's give it a little sound test. Small cap, Sam, are you guys here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
Chat, we sound all right? Give some thumbs up or something in the chat if you can hear us.
Sounds good. All right, people are saying we're good. So Sam does not have his video on, and he doesn't have an Anata NFT, but we will get him one soon. Throughout this conversation, we'll convince everyone that Frax ecosystem is here to stay, and we'll convince everyone that Sam needs an Anata.
I definitely do. Right now I'm just a floating Frax logo, so
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. So check the top left corner, and that's our Sam for this video.
So actually, super quick. Anyone that doesn't know, the Frax logo is the general currency sign. It's actually like an ASCII symbol. That's where we got it. You can type it out on every keyboard. So just if anyone's curious why I always use that as a logo or anything, it actually has a history. You can see it on Wikipedia. It's basically when the internet came out. There's dollar signs, euros, all these things, and they had a placeholder for something called just general currency symbol for what they thought would be an internet currency for people that don't want to just type in the dollar sign, the S with the line. And it never took off. No one really used it. Everyone just used dollars. And until Frax, no one really took hold of that symbol. So that's just the history of where that symbol comes from.
Damn, I feel like that was a great way to kick it off. Usually people start things off with like a what is Frax, but I think our audience, correct me if I'm wrong, small cap, but audience is mostly degens, people that are probably pretty deep in this space. They're all over Twitter. They spend more time on Discord than they spend in the sunlight. So we're gonna probably skip on the easy questions like what is Frax, and we're just gonna go straight into the meat here because we only have you for an hour and we have lots and lots to get through. Um, Small cap, do you want to
Completely
kick us
agree.
off? I think you had some questions about like the. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, completely agree. We're just gonna say appreciate really everyone hopping on as well. 100 plus
Oh,
people
that too.
already, and yeah, just tons of support from last week. So excited to really bring you guys Sam from Frax. I think this is an awesome first guest, and based off our show last week, we had a ton of great conversation around Frax. Really stemmed from talking about Temple, talking about really the Curve and CVX wars. So really one of the best guests from really our conversations, recapping that conversation from last week. So really looking forward to diving in here. So we should have about one guest for you guys every week. We've got Sam this week, and I believe we're going to do Sammy from Redacted next Tuesday. And instead of doing a quick 30 minutes after we're done here, I'm talking about our positions. Myself and DCF we'll hop on and do an alpha call separately here in the next couple of days. So it's a quick rundown, and completely agree. I say we dive right into it. I think everybody knows what Frax is. They've kind of cemented themselves as one of the 500-pound gorillas in the space. So looking forward to learning a little bit more about where the ecosystem's heading as a whole. So there's just my quick tidbit as an intro. But
Sweet.
Hopefully we'll be the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room in the next few months, so gain a few pounds.
I got some whack stuff on the screen right now, and I have no idea where it came from. So why don't you get into start questions, and I'm gonna fix why this thing says okay in the middle of the screen.
perfect. So I mean, I think for myself, like I mean, there's tons of stuff going on within the Frax ecosystem. I mean, the more research I did here over the past week, the more excited I really got. I think one of the biggest things that you guys have going on, at least in my opinion, was really the Frax base pool. So I know that proposal was put out by yourself on Curve. Looks like everything's trending in the right direction. So would love to chat a little bit about where you guys really see that going, what that's going to do for the ecosystem, and really what that sets you guys up to do alongside of Curve long term. So would love to start there.
Definitely. So I assume everyone's familiar with Curve and how meta pools work. So Frax kind of started concept of, if you have a protocol that controls its own liquidity and collateral, like Frax and like others like Fei, for example, and all of these, you can deploy it to AMMs, right? UniV3, Curve, and all this stuff, and the protocol itself can earn yield, earn the transaction fees, and everything. And that, I think people don't really appreciate, or maybe they don't notice how that was actually a kind of a paradigm change, because before that everyone just rented liquidity, right? Everyone just basically paid their governance token to rent liquidity inside of these dexes, right? And the Curve AMO that we developed, which is basically a smart contract that sends collateral and extra Frax into our Curve pool, essentially allows Frax to be one of the largest TVL and controllers of its own liquidity on Curve. And as you guys probably know, the way Curve works is that everything gets paired with 3CRV, which is a stablecoin pool of DAI, USDC, and USDT. And before the whole Terra debacle and the depeg and stuff, there was a plan, there was a talk with us and Doe and stuff to create an alternative or pool, which basically meant Frax and UST and USDC and USDT, and people can start pairing with this. Other projects can pair with that. And after last month, that obviously is impossible to do. Unfortunately, the whole Terra situation was really bad and everything. So we went back to the drawing board. We said, okay, what is the fundamental aspect here that basically Frax has been able to do, and how can we bring that in a low risk way, basically in a risk-free way as close as possible that comes to with Frax, and allow other projects to pair with Frax liquidity, with Frax's own protocol and liquidity. What does that look like? What does a Frax base pool look like? And we thought, okay, let's not overcomplicate things, right? Let's just do Frax USDC. Basically, by definition, the least risk thing you can possibly do, right? If you're gonna work with Frax, obviously there's Frax, and then USDC is basically tokenized treasuries, right?
Yeah.
And what we're proposing is any project that pairs with the Frax base pool will proportionally get incentivized by the demand that they create. And this is totally a new way to think about it, because before you'd have to basically rent liquidity and then kind of subsidize USDC, DAI, and Tether, right?
Right.
Versus here, if you pair with Frax and USDC, we don't keep the amount that you help grow. Basically, we don't keep the CRV and CVX. We actually channel it back to your pool. So for example, if there's a Fei FBP pool, right? Or if there's a MIM FBP pool or anything, right? Mm-hmm. Even like I said before, DAI too, right? We had Frax, we never really had a problem with DAI or anything. So in fact, we can even do DAI FBP, and then however much organic demand there is for DAI, we literally channel it back to anyone LPing the DAI FBP pool, the Frax base pool. And so this is totally a new way to think about how to pair things on Curve, because we don't keep it, right? We're not saying thanks for the subsidy, like thanks for basically paying for a bunch of our liquidity or our TVL. We actually essentially build a network effect around the FBP as a Schelling point for liquidity, and then we just give it all back proportional to the demand for FBP, right, that each protocol generates, right? So if like your protocol has like a 1 billion TVL curve meta pool, right, 500 million of that is FBP demand, the yield we get for that just comes right back to your project, right? Or if your
When you say
protocol,
the yield we get for that, what does that mean? Like, at the end of the day, the people that are adding the FBP dash, let's say it's MIM, so people add FBP MIM LP. Isn't the yields owned by them? Like, how is Frax getting yields from that?
yeah, so Frax will channel the AMO contracts. So AMOs are we move our liquidity, our collateral, and Frax expansions into different curve pools, right? So right
Right.
now we have we're the largest LP in the Frax 3 CRV pool, right? This is how people can be sure like the liquidity is not going to get rugged or like it's not going to get affected if the price of FXS goes up or goes down or whatever, right? And so we anticipate being very vast majority size of this Frax base pool, right? And
Right.
obviously other people can LP the Frax base pool too. It's a permissionless pool, right? And like you can, LP it at any time and it's like basically as low risk as possible. But we anticipate being like 90% or 70% or whatever of the Frax base pool. And the way that can increase is more demand, right? More demand
Right.
for Frax base pool LPs in these meta pools paired with it.
Okay. So now what happens is I add liquidity to the MIM slash Frax base pool. Half my liquidity is MIM, half my liquidity is Frax base pool. Are you saying that you will also add MIM Frax base pool LP and farm convex curve with it? Or are you saying that because they added Frax base pool liquidity, they ended up minting some Frax and then the yields that are earned on that Frax and the AMO will come back to their pool?
Yeah, we're saying that the second one. In fact, the reason we
Awesome.
structured it like this, right, is that we do not want Frax as a protocol to take esoteric risk of, all the
Other
possible
stables. Yeah.
stable. Exactly. We only take Frax USDC risk of the
Right.
base pool, which is basically riskless.
That's actually such an amazing idea because now you can give people yield just for using your base pool, and they don't have to worry about they don't have to you don't have to worry about taking on risk of these like random stables. So someone can't really come like and maliciously attack you for doing that.
Right, and someone can't, for example, there was a lot of concern, and in retrospect, rightfully so, about the four pool, where
Hmm.
people were like, okay, well, Frax shouldn't really build a four pool AMO or something, right? Because then that would take a lot of UST peg risk, and in
Yeah.
retrospect, whoever said that was right on.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So with this base pool, when does the vote happen, or like what do you think the timeline looks like?
Yeah, so hopefully very soon, to be honest. I've been talking with Mitch at Curve, the Curve founder. So
Yeah.
what needs to happen first is the Curve team just needs to deploy the Frax base pool themselves. Now the reason for that is if you go to Curve .fi, right, and you go to the factory contract and you say, you want to create a factory pool, you actually cannot create any pools on Curve that pair with DAI USDC or USDT stablecoins without the contract throwing an error. It's actually coded in the contract that if you want to pair any stablecoin with those three, it automatically falls back to 3CRV. So like yeah, if you go
Okay.
to the factory, for example, click the factory tab up on
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I got
yeah,
it.
then like basically you can't there's no other base pool. So first what the curve team needs to
I
do is
see.
deploy
Yeah.
Frax.
Wow. There's only three pool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's such
and
a big deal. I
That is a
mean,
huge deal. That's actually
the
massive. Like Frax will be the only other option from three pool. That's insane.
well,
yeah, we don't want
I
to
think
count it
the
before it
piece of
hatches
that.
because there has
Oh,
to be
sorry.
in a DAO vote, right? So after the team deploys this base pool, right, then there will be a curve DAO vote of CRV holders, right? And what that'll do is then that's the vote that is going to put Frax base pool up as the other option with 3 CRV. So we technically still have to pass that. Now, The second part of this proposal was the whitelisting of VECRV, right?
Right.
And so this part is where a lot of our positive sum, mentality and how to just create overall value comes from. So all of the Frax base pool earnings that we as a protocol earn, that's basically from our collateral, right? From our expansions, that's not going to go to the other protocols, right? Not the other pairs, but our own. We're going to just permanently lock that, right? We're going to permanently lock that, and we're going to permanently continue to vote Frax BP, right? For the gauge weight and everything. And the more we vote for that, right, the more we actually earn, and the more we actually can distribute based on how much other people pair for with it as well, and the amount that they all have their demand for, right? That's the thing that gets dropped back to those projects.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, so I think one of the big things is like, there's so many people who are trying to avoid USDT exposure. And like, if you have a Frax base pool, just Frax USDC, I think one, you kind of get to avoid some of the USDT exposure, especially with some new legislation. But when you're talking about, hey, like what's that actually going to do for the ecosystem? If you're going to have 5 or 6 different things paired with base pool, I mean, that could be double the size of Frax, I would say, almost overnight. And I think why a lot of Curve and CVX stands could care is if you're no longer offloading that CRV, which was a problem, I don't want to say a problem in the past, but one of the concerns is that's massively bullish for that ecosystem as well. So I don't know if you have numbers on like, hey, in the past, it was like maybe monthly, like what Frax was offloading from a CRV standpoint, but I'd be like interested to know like what kind of sell pressure is being eliminated by that new proposal, if you guys do just lock CRV for the long term and kind of change that method of staking your rewards.
Yeah, I mean, massive amount, right? There's just actually, I'll get you a lot of other stats in addition to the CRV. Is, for example, in that governance proposal I wrote, right now, around half, obviously it changes slightly, but about half of the 3-pool TVL is subsidized by Frax. Like if you go to the Curve/3-pool, that has, I can do it right now. That has about, let's take a look, 1.65 billion, right, in the 3-pool. And Frax's Curve pool has literally 800 million of that, right? Of
Holy shit.
So we literally subsidize half of that 3-pool, which is the predominant liquidity of USDC, USDT, and DAI that goes through Curve. The thing that's the bread and butter, right? It has like $112 million of volume. That has everyone uses it because they need to go through USDC and Tether and DAI and stuff. And the cool thing here is actually the second part is one of the things with Frax is we have modest volume, but we don't have a very high velocity of money, meaning there's not a lot of volume turnover with Frax. The way you fix that is 2 ways. One, being a central liquidity locus between all of the stablecoins, right? Part of the reason you see 3-pool always at the top of the volume rankings on Curve is every single trade goes through 3-pool, right? So like if you want Frax to die, that's 3-pool, the 3-pool volume, right? Because it goes to die, and then
it's the only base pool, so it basically has to.
Exactly. And so one thing that's going to happen is not just for Frax market cap and also obviously all the CRV that's locked, but Frax is going to become a very high volume and high turnover money, right? Because it's going to have deep liquidity with pretty much anything that wants to pair in a Frax BP meta pool. And this is actually really good. Frax has historically been a really good savings stablecoin. If you think about it, Frax has some of the best yields. It's never lost its peg, so it's very safe, and it's Lindy. People really like to just hold and save it. Doesn't mean they like to trade it, right? So that's why the volume is not high, and we don't have a lot of leverage and lending, which is actually going to change soon with Frax Lend, which we can talk about in a little bit. But like so far we don't, right? So it's a really good savings stable coin. So but it has low velocity. But with this, the velocity and
Yeah.
liquidity of Frax is going to
Everyone's going
probably,
through Frax. Yeah, no matter what stable you use, you're kind of moving through Frax, and it's the liquidity layer between them, and everyone's get paid to use it as a liquidity layer. It's such a beautiful setup.
exactly.
So can you touch on like what that actually means for people who are looking to pair with either like say you're I don't know mem like what's going to be the difference of them pairing with Frax base pool or going with 3CRV? Like
Yeah.
how do
So
bribes incorporate into that? Like what's actually going to be the tangible differences? Like it'd be good to kind of understand like why that you guys have a chance to want to say overtake some of that 3CRV dominance or
yeah.
three pool dominance.
So for example, I'll just like use like rough numbers here. So for example, the MIM curve pool right now has about 90 million 3CRV and 230 million MIM in it right now. So it's a little bit imbalanced, but it's creating $90 million of 3CRV demand, right? So like 3CRV is basically being subsidized about $90 million from MIM LPs in their meta pool. Now, they're not getting that distributed back to them, right? They're basically just creating this subsidy basically for that. In this setup, if they switch to Frax BP and then there's 90 million demand of Frax BP, that allows the Curve AMO to mint more Frax, right, up to somewhere around 90 million. Obviously, these are estimates into the Frax base pool, right, and earn the actual APY of the Frax base pool. We're not just going to take that 90 million, APR of, what is it, like 7-8% right now
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
it's. We're not just going to take that and say, hey, thanks for doing that, Mim, like that's nice of you. We're going to, every period, we're going to take that yield that, thanks to Mim in this example, the protocol has earned, and we're just going to distribute it back to the MIM protocol. They can basically use it to expand their bribes or whatever. And every project that wants to do this, they can reach out to us and set up basically an on-chain strategy. And so that will just go right back to them.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to spend the entire time on the four pool. We used half the call. From there, I think like a big piece now is just like you were saying. What most people miss out on in Frax ecosystem is they don't realize how the underlying AMOs actually work. So what you were just saying there is a lot when people mint Frax into the curve pool for the new base pool or put Frax in there, what happens is they have to use USDC to mint that Frax. So that USDC actually comes to the Frax protocol, right? And then you take that USDC and you put it into these AMOs. And that's how you have this like Curve AMO, which has over $1 billion in it. So I think one of the questions I've always wondered, I've always had is like, as a user, how do I know how much Frax is protocol owned, as in you minted against the USDC in the AMO, so it doesn't actually have claim to the underlying USDC, versus how much of the Frax is user owned, which is like minted and held by users? Is there a cool way for me to see that?
Yeah, so those are good questions. One is, so you're totally correct. One additional piece of information is the other direction can happen too, right? AMOs can mint Frax as well as they can burn Frax as well as
Right.
they can move collateral, right? The USDC. So
Yeah.
the other way that this can work is someone can just buy Frax from the curve pool until the curve pool is imbalanced with much less Frax than USDC, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the AMO can just simply mint Frax single-sided into it
Right.
to balance it 50-50
Right.
and then get LP tokens. So that side is also how it works. Yeah, so we have the collateral ratio on the dashboard, which is essentially the amount of Frax that's backed by hard assets like USDC. Right now, it's actually almost 90%. It's like 89.7,
89.5. Yeah.
something like that. And so like that's the amount that is totally fully entirely backed by hard assets. We also obviously the remaining amounts backed by volatile assets like FXS, some lock things like VL, CVX. We don't really count that as hard assets because it's not liquid and immediately able to be, redeemed. But it's important to highlight, for example, that Frax has a lot of locked liquidity in a lot of different places, both in R gauges, other protocols that use us that makes use of locking and things like that. And one of the things in kind of times of liquidity crisis or like bank runs or whenever the Terra thing happened, if you take a full look at the entire landscape of, like you were saying, user-owned Frax, protocol-owned Frax, protocol and liquidity, you can actually do a deterministic analysis and see that there can't actually be a bank run right now with Frax, even though there's 89.5% USDC or hard asset backing every single Frax.
Yeah.
There is not.
So wait, when you say every single Frax, does that include the ones the protocol minted?
Yeah, it does.
Oh wow. Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, so but here's the thing. For example, the way that that's actually calculated is in real time. So for example, when the protocol owns a lot of Curve LP tokens, right, and half of it is Frax, that half of the Frax does not get counted in the CR, obviously, right? Because you can't back yourself with yourself.
Yeah.
And so as someone puts in one USDC into the Curve pool to take out Frax, right, that slightly increases the collateral ratio if the protocol has a majority of the liquidity.
And then the protocol can just mint a Frax into the other side and continue to farm more, and it keeps the thing on peg.
Precisely.
Awesome.
Precisely.
So why does collateral ratio plus decentralization ratio equal more than 100 on the website?
Yeah, so the decentralization ratio is something we came up with that I think it's underappreciated, but it's actually kind of important. But it's basically the amount of Frax that's backed by completely non-custodial assets. So like not fiat coins, not any kind of custodial asset, like not WBTC, right? Because at the end of the day, that's custodied by BitGo or something, right?
Okay.
Like, yeah, and so that 23%.
So there's just different numbers. Yeah, I got you.
It's totally different. And so this is kind of important. We made it because everyone always asks, how much is the centralized backing versus the decentralized backing, right? For example, A has almost, I think, if you use our decentralization ratio algorithm, it has like almost 100%. It's like 90 something because they just use ETH and ETH and stuff for everything. Obviously, that comes with certain downsides, right? Like when ETH goes down right now in a bear market. So here in the decentralization ratio, it actually has a very sophisticated way of calculating it. So, for example, if we are partially backed by DAI, right, because 3CRV is like 2/3 fiat coins, right, and 1/3 DAI.
Yeah.
DAI itself is like 65% centralized assets, right? It's like USDP, USDC, PSM, and all this stuff. It actually only counts the decentralized portion of DAI. So like, for example, it's actually recursive to make sure that you don't count DAI as 100% decentralized because underlying DAI has claims on USDC, right, which is itself a fiat coin.
Yeah.
So technically, Frax has more decentralization than DAI itself, but again, to be frank, everyone right now uses part USDC, and that's part of the reason Frax and DAI have been so resilient, to be fair, with their peg.
Okay. So now on that same note, then 23%, like about 24.8% is decentralized, 90% of it is USDC. So Frax seems to be overbacked when you think about it in a way, which is great.
It's not 90% USDC. It's 90% USDC 3CRV or something else. If it was purely 90% USDC, then the decentralization ratio would be 11.
Because you put it into the 3 curve. Yeah, I got you in the AMOs. Okay, but in a doomsday situation, like let's say, what happened in UST? It's like there was liquidity for people to swap UST, even if it started depegging a bit, but they had a big problem because a lot of their liquidity was because people were farming in Curve, right, or in Convex, and those people pulled liquidity. So it just made the problem even worse because LPs decided to dip. In a doomsday situation, does Frax have that issue, Or is it going to be like, no matter what, this liquidity can't leave because it's all protocol owned?
Right. This is exactly what I was saying. Exactly currently at this collateral ratio, that is not an issue. For example,
Okay.
if you simulate everything, right? Because Frax, unlike Terra, is entirely deterministic, right? Everything is in smart contracts. You can see it. There's no like, we don't use jump. We don't have market makers. We don't have collateral off chain. We don't have like something like everything is like maker. What you see is what you get, right? So
Right.
you can actually simulate this. Like you can say, what if every single person farming Frax right now pulled their curve LP and
Exactly.
then dumped
Yeah.
the Frax half into the curve pool,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
then what if everyone took their Frax and then dumped it in Uniswap every single
Yep.
amount of liquidity against DAI, USDC,
Yep.
and Tether, whatever? What will happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
will it
That's what I want to
depeg?
know. Yeah.
Currently, it will not depeg. You can do
No
this
way.
simulation. Yes, currently there's
Wow.
no way that there's a bank run. The reason for this, and you don't have to believe me, right? Trust but verify. You can go and check this out. There's a lot of lock liquidity in just our own gauges, right? There's a lot of protocol owned liquidity from both the Uni V3 AMO and this Curve AMO, which has,
Right.
like you can see, like 800 million or something, give or take, right?
Yeah.
And you can see there's, I I haven't checked this for a few days to see if it's increased or not, but I think there's over 100 million of locked Uni V3 stable range liquidity for at least a year and a half. You can actually, if you click the King page
Yeah.
in the tab, and then for example, if you go to Frax C gauge, and that page, if you go down to the Frax USDC Uni V3, you can actually see how much things are locked, and you can see for how long they are. So the short answer is basically you can simulate this. It's not going to have a bank run effect currently. If the collateral ratio goes down, right? If the collateral ratio goes like 80% or like 75 or something, yeah, then obviously that's not enough lock liquidity, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Uni V3, the
Uh,
Uni V3, right?
yeah, I clicked the Uni V2 one by mistake. I was just thinking that, but don't worry. People can find it later and we can verify. But that's the core I wanted to get into because I was in the Temple Discord the other day and there was a lot of people that were being like, oh, we should swap our Frax to something else, and people were worried. There were even some people that were like mods and stuff saying that, oh, actually in a Doomsday situation you wouldn't be able to get all USDC or all DAI. And from what you said, that is completely wrong. So I would invite people to just replay this, check that out. But the AMOs are really good. Sam is basically saying if you removed all the user-owned liquidity and everyone tried to swap, it would still hold strong. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
and you can simulate me, right? And so
yeah,
I encourage people to actually go and
and
take a
try it.
look. Also, this is, if you think about it, at like a philosophical level, this is kind of what it should actually mean to be an algorithmic stablecoin, right? Because doing is if you had the global economy on chain, right? Like let's for example to think about this for a moment and what it means, right? You're basically saying how integrated is Frax in places like in its own gauges, in like other protocols that let you have lock liquidity, or like in Aave where debt denominated in Frax, right? There's like 9 figures in Frax deposit. People are borrowing it, so that's Frax that has to be repaid, et cetera, et cetera. You can go and look at all of this stuff, right? And you can actually create a simulation of the whole state of the economy, right? You could say, okay,
Yeah,
how much algorithmic supply can Frax or this currency essentially actually logically have without there being a bank run, right? Everything, every other kind of, the creation before Frax and like stuff like that, or like Terra, it was all like an estimate, right? They're like, oh,
yeah,
we need a little bit more collateral, or oh, like Anchor is growing really quickly. We I don't think this is enough collateral or whatever. Well, if it's all on chain, you can just look at it, right? You can actually just simulate the whole state of the economy of the stablecoin and be like, is this too much algorithmic supply where this is just a confidence game that's going to unwind, when there's a bad time, or no, is there actually enough integrations, enough debt denomination, enough lock liquidity, et cetera, that like, okay, 10% of the supply or like 5% of the supply can literally mathematically be printed, and there wouldn't be a bank run, right? Like
Right.
that's kind of philosophically what it kind of should mean to create an actual algorithmic
Yeah,
stablecoin, right?
totally.
So how about like when you take a look at maybe outside of the Curve ecosystem and outside of maybe even DeFi in general? So I mean, there's been a lot of talk on like legislation lately. I think there's lots of banks that are coming to build their own stable coins. So I think from my perspective, I think you guys have a definite advantage over somebody like USDC because you are more profitable. But like, what's that look like? Do you think long term, like when you're targeting maybe TradeFi or banks or even companies that might be in the space like Visa or just different corporate entities? Like what makes them maybe more attracted to using something like Frax? Is it fit the risk profiles, or where do you see that for Frax
Yeah.
outside of the
I,
DeFi ecosystem?
Right. I saw the bill in the news today, by the way. I was following that. I actually think that bill is extremely bullish, just as like a side note. And the main thing, the way that I view this stuff, by the way, is like it's outside of kind of Frax's scope to try to do things off chain. Like I don't think, for example, Frax should look into incorporating a company and holding like treasuries, right?
Right.
And so, for example, there's always going to be some use for something like USDC, which is tokenized treasuries, or like you said, if Visa comes out with a stable coin that is
Right.
also really irreputable or something. And that's basically the link to the real world, right? I almost think of it almost like a bridge fi kind of,
Yeah.
I call them bridge
Yeah, that's a cool
finance,
idea.
Yeah.
right? And so, for example, USDC is not going to be building AMOs or like these
No.
very like intricate ways of integrating deep stablecoin liquidity, working directly with Fei, MIM, or all these other projects, coming out with really unique AMM primitives like Frax swaps, TWAM, and stuff like that, right? They're not going to be in that area. What they're going to be specialized for is the requirements to hold treasuries, the reserve requirements for like whatever the next Basel 3 is, or whatever for stable coins, or what have you, right? And so that they're going to be specialized in that sector. Frax will be specialized as kind of the predominant bleeding edge on-chain stablecoin for everything on-chain, right? And so that's
Yeah.
also why we're doing the FPI and stuff, is like a new unit of account on-chain. And so I actually think it's a really symbiotic relationship. I think there's got to be stablecoin protocols like Frax, like Maker too, obviously, right? And stuff, to stay on chain and build extremely good tech that we all obviously know like it's not in Circle or Visa's wheelhouse to do.
Yeah. That's cool. You kind of just offload the problem, right? It's like you already know USDC is going to follow these things. So if you use USDC as your main collateral, then by nature you are bridged to dealing with these things.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously the most, pressing question right after that's like, okay, what if one day you wake up and then like, the government's like, USDC, you must like blacklist every protocol that uses you unless they submit to crazy KYC or whatever, and like you can no longer trade USDC on Uniswap and stuff, right? That's the first, thing that everyone kind of gets freaked out about. Or it's like, okay, if you use USDC a lot, how what's going to happen if that's the situation? Well, there's two things. As we said before, Frax doesn't actually hold idle USDC, right? It immediately deploys it to like Curve and UniV3 and stuff. So the only scenario that this is even relevant is the one I just described, where USDC literally has to like blacklist all of the Uniswap and Curve pool contracts and system contracts and stuff like that.
Right.
In that situation, and like for example, compounds contracts and Aave and stuff, as we just saw it with the legislation today, it does not look like it's going in that direction. It actually looks really great, right? You
Yeah.
can just let like Visa and depository institutions allow themselves to issue stable coins. That was part of one of the bills, right? And it's going the exact opposite direction, right? But if it does go this extreme, view, they're gonna have to, obviously, the only way to get to Frax or something like Maker or something is to nuke everything, right? Which
Yeah.
is at that point I think we have bigger problems to worry about if we can't swap it on Curve or Uniswap.
Yeah. Nice.
I
Okay.
agree. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that surprised me was kind of the stance that they were taking on stable coins and on CMBCs and like saying, hey, we're going to ban that. We'd like to kind of go forward with a lot of the stables that are out there, keep it a little more decentralized. So, I mean, I think that piece of the legislation was extremely bullish, and I mean, I think it helps Frax. So, I mean, pretty excited for you guys from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's really bullish. Frax, Die as well, and like Faye, I think yeah, it's pretty bullish overall decentralized stablecoins.
Sweet.
And I think like being able to build a stable coin isn't as easy as many people think. I mean, you look at like Gemini, for instance, like they're being looked at right now because they were pretty much paying traders and giving kickbacks in GUSD, just trying to get use cases out there. Like what you guys are building from a like the different use cases across DeFi and across the crypto ecosystem is very hard to replicate when you're coming in late to the party. So I think you guys have a very good head start from that standpoint.
Yeah, I always say money is the strongest network effect, right? It's stronger than like a social network effect or like a brand network effect. Money is the ultimate network effect, right? So it's like the more debt denominated in like your stable coin, the more liquidity in your stable coin, the more that other people hold it, that basically makes it difficult to dislodge them holding something else and coordinating a large group of people holding a different stable coin. That's the mother of all network effects, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the next subject, which is FXS. So we don't have a lot of time left, so I just want to make sure we get into the meat here. Obviously, the question I got when I asked everyone, which I asked Sam, is why FXS up? So why don't we go through, like, there's so much FUD I see on the timeline right now of people being like, or FXS goes down because Frax wants to get to 100% collateral ratio, and they only see FXS as a coin that gets minted when Frax demand goes up, and they're not seeing long-term like revenue or long-term value accrual to FXS, regardless of how much Frax gets minted. Obviously, more Frax minted means more value to the ecosystem, but it's not just like a mint burn coin like Terra was. Can you go through like why FXS has value without the algo Ponzi, not the Ponzi, just the algo side, and what future plans you have, just like general bullishness on FXS in general. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. So first of all, yeah, it's definitely not just a mint and burn like the way UST worked. I actually think obviously like the intro of this video said, nothing is investment advice, especially in this market, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
but like I think FXS currently, because it's been hit pretty hard, just like everything, but probably a little bit harder from all the like Terra
Yeah.
associations or
Yeah.
alpha stable stuff. I think it's super undervalued. I've been buying DCAing and stuff. Not investment advice, obviously.
Yeah.
In
Not
fact,
investment advice. We'll
the
replay
other
the video at the end. Don't worry. We'll remind everyone.
and in fact, the way that I take a look at it is like you guys said, the protocol earns a lot of revenue in the form of CRV, CVX, soon a lot of interest rate from Frax Lend and a lot of the lending that we're going to do in the coming weeks, and a lot of transaction fees, right, from swaps and the protocol and liquidity. And there's essentially a decision of what is the most valuable thing for every dollar of revenue to do? Is FXS the most undervalued thing? If so, you should buy it back with profits, right? That's basically the definition of a stock buyback of sorts, right? If the best thing you can do is that your governance token is highly undervalued compared to the other assets you can hold on the balance sheet, you can actually buy it back. In fact, we have TWAMs, which are the perfect thing to do that with. So in fact, one of the things I was thinking about is having a community discussion of how much of the protocol profits at these prices should be loaded into a TWAM, like
Damn.
10 million, 15 million
Damn.
over one period, right? And like that is the exact opposite of like kind of a algo Ponzi, right? It's like
Right.
you do a governance decision of when is your actual governance token undervalued compared to all of the things you
Right.
can have on the balance
And when you
sheet
talk
instead.
about the profits, you're talking about the result of the accrued profit on the AMO page.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And
And so
I mean,
some of these, go
it's
ahead.
probably the one thing that we can't call an algo Ponzi. I think you guys
Yeah,
are just
yeah,
so used to calling it calling it that because most of the other competitors in the space
are
are.
that.
But
Yeah,
you guys have been able to prove out like those earnings over time, holding peg. Like I mean, I think it's almost the exact opposite. But I
Yeah.
mean, from my perspective, I'd love to hear about how Frax there. I know you teased maybe some secondary assets in the ecosystem. I'd love to see what effect that might have on Frax share. I mean, I think possibly doing a algo peg to ETH or something similar. If you do that, you also tag that into the Frax base pool and have like Frax base pool paired with like Frax ETH or FXS ETH, whatever you might call that asset. I think that makes it extremely interesting to building out a larger ecosystem. So would love to kind of hear, based off of some of what you've already teased, like where you're planning on going with that and how that affects, I guess, Frax share.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is a good time to bring up Frax
new
Swap and
UI.
Frax and kind of, yeah,
Let's
exactly.
go.
Yeah.
Brand new UI. First time. This is what are they doing like in the real world? It's a first time debut. Exclusive sneak peek for market capping viewers. The brand new Frax Finance UI. So take it
Yeah,
away,
so this
Sam.
yes, this is totally live on the preview subdomain, but it'll be very shortly live on the actual one. It's entirely redesigned with a lot of new features, including the Frax Swap, TWAM, and the full the full functionality. This is also where Frax Lend will have the UI shortly, and I think it's important to kind of talk about the big vision here and like why we're actually building an AMM or even like a lending protocol and stuff all around a single governance token, which is like FXS. And the way that we look at it, right, is like we have this concept of like the Trinity, which is every kind of DeFi ecosystem or DeFi economy is composed of just different flavors of lending, liquidity, and currency, right? Which means stable coins, AMM, and a lending market, right? And if you think about it, one of the main things that you see around with different projects is like they kind of build this stuff internally, but don't go the final 10 to 20% in making it a general infrastructural product. Like for example, Maker has their huge PSM, right? It's
Yeah.
called the Peg Stability Module. It's just a different way of saying it's a hand coded curve pool, right? Of DAI and USDC, and then they can do other ones as well, like USDP and DAI and stuff. But what if instead of just having it be this permission thing that, for example, Maker deploys, if they actually had a stable swap like self-serve like AMM, which they've already created with the PSM, right? They've hand
Yeah.
coded it,
Yeah.
right? And so people could actually use it, and maybe for example people will go there to LP DAI and Fei, right? Maybe Fei will
Right.
use it and stuff, and it's like both a permissionless system but also a place where like Maker can deploy its protocol and liquidity, right? And its
Right.
PSM. And it's almost like they went like 80% of the way to a kind of AMM, right? But they kind of hand coded it, right? And then they permissioned it, right? It's you can't LP it, right? You can't do anything with it except trade it one to one with DAI, and that's fine, that's good. But when we try to do everything, we try to do it really strategically. We try to think, okay, if we're gonna spend, weeks to create something like a PSM or some kind of way to buy back FXS or contract the supply of Frax or rebalance collateral or something, and we're gonna have to obviously get this stuff audited, right? We take security very seriously and all this stuff. What does it look like? Do we just hand code something and just make it like something that only we can use, or do we take a really really professional approach to it and essentially build a new primitive, right? Do we build like a
Right.
new AMM, which is what Frax Swap is, right? It allows us to use TWAMs to purchase back FXS with protocol profits or
Yeah.
contract the supply of Frax by
But this
minting
is
FXS.
this is gonna go past just FXS, right? Like you're gonna be able to TWAM into any coin, or is it only stuff you're
Yes,
gonna whitelist?
literally anything. And this is
Wow.
this is the whole goal, right? If you click the pool tab, right, you can actually just create any token. You don't even have to create a Frax pair. Obviously, we
Oh,
think a lot.
nice. And when I
A
click
lot.
add, yeah, I can just add any ERC20, right? Against
Exactly.
Frax,
Like,
right?
yeah,
Wow.
and you could like add, right? You could
And
search for it with this token address. Yeah.
does it just add the liquidity to the Frax? Like, so when I use the TWAM, right? Like, let's say there's some, let's call it like ETH shitcoin LP, in the Frax AMM, and I want to TWAM into shitcoin from my ETH. Um, I go to the TWAM tab. I'm going to say I want ETH, and in the second one, I'm going to select my shitcoin, and I'm going to choose over how long I want it, and then basically every block throughout that entire time, I'm going to buy a little bit, so I get an average price, right? Is
Precise.
it only going to buy from this pool, or is it going to like go to other pools in the ecosystem, or do you expect arbitrages just to come keep it stable so it doesn't matter?
So it only buys from the FraxSwap TWM, but that's the whole design, right? It will
Yeah,
always immediately be arbed. And in fact, you can even
right.
see that if you click the contract address at the top for the Frax FXS pair,
Yeah.
you'll actually see there's arb bots already
Oh,
that can
wow.
yeah, it's heavily used. And it's being used by arb bots, by traders, by everyone. And so you can expect basically it to always be in line
Wow.
at the exact
Okay.
right price.
And how does this give value to FXS holders? Like, is there a fee switch or something like that that FXS holders will get fees from, or later?
Yeah, there's an admin switch just like Uniswap. Obviously,
Nice.
we would probably recommend making FraxSwap one of the top AMMs like
Wow.
Curve and Uni before flipping the
Of course.
admin switch. But yes, exactly just like a decentralized AMM that's
Okay.
controlled by FXS holders.
And how do you make this the AMM? Like, how are you gonna there's no vampire attack or something like that going on here. It's just we're gonna build better features, or do you have some sort of like giga brain way to take liquidity and get it into here?
Well, there's two things. One is I anticipate TWAMs and basically functionality that caters to large protocol-owned liquidity, right? Whether it's Frax or like, Olympus DAO that'll hopefully deploy to this or whatever.
Hmm.
Be superior, obviously, like I expect just from the features. But additionally, I think what's important to highlight is we have our FXS gauges, right? And so one
Hmm.
of the things we can do is we can make sure that anyone that uses FraxSwap for their protocols, treasury rebalancing or stable coin accumulation, all this stuff, they also get FXS gauges. We're already using that to
Right.
partner with protocols and everything. And so this is just now part of the infrastructure that basically makes the whole Frax economy go around, right? And so you
Right.
can get pair here, you can get FXS emissions, you can deploy your protocol on liquidity, your DAO's treasury here. And I actually think this will probably be right up there as one of the top AMMs next to Uniswap, Curve, and Balancer and stuff in the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully, if we do this
Damn.
right.
Damn.
When
Okay.
you
And
when you're doing those FXX gauges, just curious, are you going to be using hidden hand for a lot of that from Redacted, or I guess what's your plan on gauges to incentivize them?
Sorry, can you ask that again?
he's
Sorry
at,
if the mic's struggling. I
no,
was
no,
asking
it's not bad.
if you plan to use hidden hand or like I know Redacted has a Frax section for gauges. Is that how you plan to incentivize some of those, or
Yeah,
what's
yeah. In fact, so redacted from like hidden hand. There's also pitch.money. There's also I think Vodium is potentially working on something too. But these are kind of the trifecta of places you can go to earn bribes slash incentives. Hidden hand and pitch I think are the top two right now that people can go and earn bribes or incentives.
Yeah,
makes sense?
that's sick.
I, I I was just going to say another good question that came out of the chat was like, how's this going to compete with Curve Swap? Like, is it kind of taking some of the volume away from them specifically, or I mean, like, what's kind of your plan to have them use the AMM over just swapping on Curve?
Yeah,
More.
we don't necessarily want to be like zero sum competitors and stuff. Like we're still going to deploy a vast majority of our like protocol owned liquidity to Curve. In fact, like we started
Yeah.
in the conversation, Curve is like a hallmark piece of our kind of DeFi strategy. I think for volatile pairs that protocols themselves need to deploy their own liquidity and kind of rebalance stuff. So for example, let's take ohm frax, right? Like an ohm frax pair, right? And one thing ohm can do is, in addition to doing their normal bonds, instead of giving large bond discounts, they can simply take some of the ohm that they mint into their treasury. They can put a TWAM, right, over, let's say, 30 days or whatever the governance is. And by definition, that's the most efficient way to slowly rebalance and take Frax into their balance sheet and rebalance it by distributing ohm, right? And so
Yeah.
our bots will come and do that instead of having to do larger discounts for bonds. Now they could still obviously do the bonds because that's how people can invest in the ecosystem, but paired with protocol and liquidity on TWAMs, I think it's like the perfect kind of mixture there.
I can already see like requests for things like max prices and things like that, right? Like if I'm Olympus and I know I want to protect liquid backing, then I can almost just start up a TWAM and then just say always slowly buy back until price hits this over like the next 5 years, you know? So you're always protecting your liquid backing somehow, buying when it's really low, but no matter what, getting to a certain price would be cool.
Yeah, that's actually, like you said, that's one of the most requested features
Yeah,
and
there you go.
it's on the list.
And is there custom curves like small cap was referring to? I think just through the UI, when I look at this, I just think it's a regular XY equals K kind of curve.
Yeah, right now it's literally a XY equals K AMM with TWAMs,
Okay,
but you guys are indeed reading my mind. So
let's
it's
go. Okay, we'll
yeah,
get it all.
we're basically working on custom curves that are really interesting, both in terms of concentrated liquidity, but also things that are are really unique and haven't been seen before.
That's
So
tight.
check that out when we're done with it.
Okay, do you want to tell us about Frax Lend? Is that on this UI yet?
That is not on this UI, but will soon be, hopefully in the next 2-3 weeks. So yeah, Fraxland goes back to the same philosophy here, right? Like Fraxland is basically a completely modular, isolated pair system that we call term sheets, which means you can just create isolated pairs with almost infinite customizability. You can basically create pairs where, they're fully permissionless too, right? So like,
Yeah.
borrow Frax with ETH over collateralization, right? That's just, everyone knows what that is. You can do something where you can create a pair where only a whitelisted known address of a DAO or someone that's known like Tetranode or something,
Yeah.
right, can come and borrow. And so you can modify the LTV specifically
Yeah.
for that exact isolated pair. We call them, whitelisted or credit-based
Okay.
LTV. And
Nice.
so you can do all this stuff, and it's basically an entire framework for creating lending systems, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I was saying before of what we want to do is build this stuff strategically instead of kind of like hand coding these kind of like esoteric systems. Like for example, Maker has CDPs, right?
Yeah.
And you can go and take out loans with over collateralized ETH, and you can generate DAI. Now, I don't think Maker has this system where, someone can come and relend their DAI into a CDP and kind of get the interest rate, right? They have to go to Compound and Aave to actually do that stuff as like a permissionless money market. But Maker's already created 90% of the functionality with their CDPs. They just didn't go the final 10,
I was
15.
just yeah. This I was gonna ask you. Is Frax Lend like literally minting Frax against the assets, or do users have to come lend Frax, or does the protocol have to come shove Frax into the lend side?
Exactly, both. It can do
Holy
both.
shit, that's huge. So you can
Yeah.
start doing all the like looping type stuff. Like someone could put up three curve, just like how MIM does the looping three curve yields. You could technically do that without people needing to come give variable rates, but you can just give people fixed rate amount of Frax against their fully backed three curve because that's what the AMOs are anyway.
Precisely, you can exactly make those pairs. In fact, one of the things we're gonna do once Frax Lend is out is allow people to do kind of the same leverage type of thing that MIM is
Wow.
known for, right? And you can do this exactly within the Frax Lend framework. You could create a pair where the collateral is like, a Curve LP token, right?
Yeah.
And then anyone can lend their Frax at the fixed rate, or the protocol can just mint Frax into that side, right? It's
Damn.
it's totally
Yeah.
permission.
because it's fully backed. So as long as you're minting against something, it's okay. It doesn't really matter as long as you're willing to have that asset back, the minted Frax.
Precisely. And the thing I want to highlight again is like it kind of goes back to, a lot of people ask us like, you guys are building all of this stuff, or like you're building an AMM or like a lending protocol or something. Why are you doing so many of this stuff? The point is, we're actually working and concentrating completely on Frax. The whole
Yeah.
vision here is to build the most professional and best decentralized software, and go the last extra mile, right? The last 10%, rather than like hand code a system contract that's like, here's a place, that you can open a CDP. It's like, here's an actual permissionless lending pair that you can basically do the exact same thing, but even better, right? You could do a lot of different stuff, as well as open the same kind of CDP. The protocol can mint into it too.
Damn. Okay. I'm going to move fast with the questions because we're kind of running low on time. But next thing I think we wanted to get into was, oh wait, actually before I do that, all the yields that are generated from this. Like if you set fixed rate to mint a Frax against a 3 curve, would all those yields go to accrued profits to then go to FXS holders, however that may be?
Yeah, there is
Oh,
there is
amazing.
no other, governance to there. It's all owned and governed by FXS
FXS.
holders. Yeah.
Damn. Okay, sick. Yeah, so ecosystem. So small cap touched on this before, but today we see a world where if I want to bribe Frax or FXS holders to give emissions to my gauge, I can go to tools like Hidden Hand, or I can go to tools like Pitch, right? I feel like bribing is one big piece of the ecosystem there. And then the other piece of the ecosystem is just managing Frax gauges, right? So you have Convex, who has a bunch of locked FXS, and they use their locked FXS to give you boosts when you give them your Frax LP tokens, and they make these little like self-contained vaults for users. But then you also have tools like Stacks, which was just launched by Temple DAO, and what they do is they let you get the time boost without having any FXS. So I can go and I can say, let me put my like Temple Frax LP into the gauge, but I don't want to lock it for 2 years. So instead, I'm going to give it to Stacks. Stacks will lock it for 2 years, and they'll give me all the yields for that full 2 year lock. And then they created like LP, so liquidity, staked LP in Curve. So I can swap the LP tokens that are 2 year locked back out for LP tokens that are not locked, or 3 year locked, or whatever they have them locked for. Um, do you feel like there's more that needs to be built in this ecosystem, or do you think around bribing and around like gauge locking and optimization, those are the things people should touch on if they want to start building in your space or in your ecosystem?
Yeah, definitely. I really like Stacks, but from the Temple DAO guys, I think it's a really cool system. And exactly, the more we have people building on this gauge ecosystem, the more vibrant and rich teams that are innovating on top of it, right?
Yeah.
It'll become a really vibrant system where people are earning yield in different ways and building primitives on top of base primitives. So for example, um, Frax's gauges are unique, like you said, in the way that people can lock the actual LP deposit for a period of time to get an extra boost, right? This is actually
Yes.
an anti-reflexive, anti-bank run mechanism, as we were saying before. Part of the reason it's verifiably impossible to have a bank run is there's a lot of locked liquidity in many of these gauges, and people get paid well for doing that, right? They get up to a 3x boost on certain gauges to lock it for up to 3 years. You can lock it for a few weeks, a year, whatever. And uh, the Stacks protocol from Temple, they've done a really good job because you can come and basically give them the LP, which they will permanently lock for 3 years. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they tokenize that position so you can exit your locked tokenized position while there's still that locked liquidity
Yeah.
acting as anti-reflexive,
Right.
anti-bank run mechanism. And so this is a really, really cool product, right? This is a really cool primitive built on top of the ecosystem that complements Convex, that complements like Stake DAO's SD FXS locker. This is focusing on LP locks
Yeah, I've
rather than.
never seen this before. Like, why do you think no one did this with Curve or why hasn't this happened before? Like when I saw it, I was like, oh, I actually never thought of doing that, like making locked liquidity, time-based locked liquidity liquid.
Is it
Yeah.
just ERC 462, like the 4626 that does it?
No,
Like,
they did this like just with regular LP tokens.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Frax, to my knowledge, was the first protocol to really say, hey, when you come to farm something, deposit an LP token, come and you have the option of voluntarily locking your LP token for a longer time for a higher boost compared to everyone else, right?
Yeah.
This is part of the design. We did this originally because to kickstart an algorithmic stablecoin, right, you need anti-bank run and like non-reflexive liquidity, right? And so this is totally part of the design. So you could only build this kind of product on top of Frax's gauges because as far as I know, we're the only ones currently that have time-based LP locking. And
Yeah.
so obviously the Temple guys are really creative and they saw this and built a platform on top of it. I'm really excited to see how it goes.
Do you think Convex is gonna just add this feature, or do you think it's like something that's unique that only Stacks can do because they own all their own liquidity and could worst case just buy back that Temple Frax LP?
That's a good question. So when you stake on Convex, you can pick how long to lock your LP with them.
Oh, when you
However,
make the vault, right?
yes, exactly.
Right.
However, I don't think right now it's tokenized, right? So I don't think
No.
they're going to manage, like the actual locked thing in a curve pool. That's unique to Stacks right now. And so I think if Stacks kind of becomes, the second Convex for Frax because of this unique feature, Convex might look at it, and I think they will. I think Stacks is a really really good idea.
Yeah. That's
I,
that's
I
sick.
wasn't aware. That's new. This is all new to me today.
There you
At
go.
least the Frax piece, so I'll have to do some research.
Yeah.
And
Now, oh, sorry. Go ahead. Small cap.
I was just gonna say, like, I have this in my notes. Is like you were one of the people who were super early to Convex and like absolutely crushed like that narrative before most people saw it coming. And I mean, you're the founder of like I believe it's a top 50 protocol right now. Like, how do you stay on top of like some of the upcoming trends, or like what's some of your secrets to finding some of this early? Is it working directly with the teams, or like how do you do a lot of your research to make sure that you're finding these narratives and keeping Frax early and like cutting edge on innovation?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that people watching this probably are the right type of people because I basically do this 24/7, right? Just like you guys that
Yeah.
you're inside in crypto more than you see the sunlight outside. That's just like me. I literally am around the clock sitting here looking at new stuff, reading about it. My checklist is basically uh, if I see something new, what is it? Um, is it something new or kind of a fork slash improvement of something that's already out? If it's something new, is the team that's doing it, do they fully understand the intricacies of it? If so, always want to talk to them. I want to basically have a dialogue going and have direct discussion, see if we can help them, if we can get involved, or what they think about stuff. And this is basically around the clock job of what I have is to see what uh, what things are happening in the ecosystem, right? And usually we've done a fairly good job of staying on top of it, right? Like we're one of the first people to have direct contact and partnership with Convex. Same thing with Olympus way last year. All the kind of trends like VFXS was the first major token after VCRV. I think Pickle was another one, but then it was basically we were the ones that actually started, and then a few months later, everyone was talking about VE tokens, right? And so, kind of the theme here is like see where the industry is going rather than trying to follow where it is right now, right? It's the Wayne Gretzky quote of like skate where the puck is going to be, not where it's
Yeah.
going right now.
Damn. And you always been on top of that. Like as
Yeah.
soon as I remember, as soon as Andre started talking about what was it called, Solidly, I messaged you be like, oh, am I gonna be able to farm with Frax on Solidly? And you were like, bro, we're gonna take over Solidly like we did with Convex. And although that ecosystem didn't work out, it wasn't your fault. But it's so cool to see that you are always there. Whenever there is an opportunity, Frax is going to be all over it. That's why I always see Frax as like the best token to hold for the best yields. It just takes a little bit of work to figure out where to get those yields, right? Like Temple, Frax, and the Gauge is like extremely high yields in the Frax ecosystem. Or another great one that I always like to show people is like FPI, Frax, and Convex. Actually, let's just bring that one up. Um, this, I think people don't really understand that, but like you get 14% or like 11 to 14% in convex on Frax FPI LP, and FPI is literally yielding money on its own. It's like stables and stables that go up only, and then 14% on it. You want to walk people through that?
Yeah, definitely. And you're totally right. Like we try to always stay on top of the best places to get yield. We can't obviously ever do something that's ultra subsidized, right? Frax is never going to do something like Anchor or anything. So the way that we have to do this in a sustainable way is find the best places that have the highest growth, right? Like new
Yeah.
things, make sure that they integrate Frax at the on the floor, right? At the base release, and that's how people can enjoy the best yield. So for FPI Frax, I think probably a lot of people are familiar with our FPI stablecoin. It's the second and other stablecoin of the Frax ecosystem. It's pegged to CPI, which is the basket of consumer items that the Fed releases every month. So it's basically an inflation resistant dollar for
Yeah.
short, right? So it grows and tracks that basket of consumer items exactly. So we have a Frax FPI liquidity pool that's integrated with Convex and Curve, and you earn CRV, CVX, and FXS, and you get Convex's boost if you deposit in there. So half of your LP is already inflation resistant, right? So it's almost like having a stable coin that earns 8% yield right now. And then the other half is Frax, it's a stable coin. And then, so you basically are getting, give or take, 4% before any of the rewards. And then you get all of the triple rewards on top. So this is actually, I think, one of DeFi's best kept secrets right
It
now.
really is. Yeah. And there's only 24 million in this pool. I'm always like, why is there only 24 million in this pool? He's such a good pool.
Yeah, I'm doing this pool as well, and it's great. So everyone, check it out if you're interested in these kinds of
Cool.
convex stable yields.
And if I'm holding FPI, just quickly, what did I mint it against? Like, how does it stay safe to track inflation?
Yeah, so it's 100% CR. You minted with Frax, and then the FPI balance sheet and the peg is totally separate from Frax. So we we basically, the FPI protocol has to make sure to grow its collateral backing at the rate of basically at the inflation rate. So
Yeah,
right
or
now,
more.
yeah, or more. And right now it's fully collateralized. Part of the FPI AMO itself is actually earning a small amount of this yield itself. So partly it's actually earning some of this cash flow, although it's predominantly user LP'd.
Of
And
course,
at
you protocol own this. Of course
yeah,
you do.
partly, yes. And then when Frax Lend comes out, people can borrow against FPI's Frax collateral, or they can also borrow FPI itself. All of that interest rate will go directly to the FPI balance sheet, right? Keeping FPI fully collateralized. And we should be able to see more of that when we release the FPI dashboard itself on the new UI. So
Yeah.
so people will be able to actually look exactly where the balance sheet is growing, making sure that FPI is 100% CR
Wow.
and everything. So far, it's
Yeah.
going quite well.
I feel like we can do a whole episode on FPI and FPIS, but I think that uses basically all our time. So why don't we just end on a final question of what is the long-term vision of Frax? Like, I go 5 years into the future. What does Frax look like? Cough, Frax chain, cough, or whatever you think.
Yeah, so I think the main theme here for people listening from the beginning is like we want to build a complete ecosystem around the current unit of account, which is the dollar, which is Frax, which is the dollar pegged, and then build complete economy around a completely new novel peg, which is the FPI, right, which is stable to a basket of consumer items. To do that, we have to build the full stack of what I think the crypto economy needs, right? You need lending, liquidity, and currency, right? Which is stable coins, a AMM that basically earns fees on all the trading that's going on, and a lot of lending and debt denomination in your currency. And then once you're really truly basically an economy, right, a full stack economy, then you can think about, like you said, cough cough, a Frax chain or roll up where you can actually capture the value of the block space or the shared state data availability that people that hold Frax hold FPI and basically have a balance with the protocol's liability actually monetize, right? They actually transfer this value, they actually pay fees to transfer it and things like that. That's the final thing of basically having your own roll-up, right? In fact, one of the things I say is Terra kind of did it or tried to do it the opposite direction. They first tried to have their own L1, and then they realized, okay, we have to actually export UST to every other chain where there's economic activity. We can't just be in this island and cap Terra's growth based on whatever the needs are on the Terra Cosmos chain, right?
Right.
And I think they had it reversed, right? What we're trying to do at Frax is the exact opposite, but then end full circle with our own chain or roll up, months down in the future when all of this stuff is successful, right? When your shared state or your block space is essentially valuable enough for people to pay fees, right?
Yeah, damn. Well, there you go. That was insane. Thanks for coming on the show. Just a quick reminder to everyone that you're all adults. Everything that Sam said, everything that we say, it's just lessons. Before you spend any money or invest in everything, do your research, make your own decisions. Nothing's financial advice, but of course, we like Frax. Sam likes Frax, and I was really excited to have you on the show. Small cap, anything you
Yeah,
want to say?
it's a bear market, guys, so be careful. But yes, and basically almost all of my net worth is entirely in VFXS, so I
Damn,
definitely stand by this.
I think the
damn.
biggest alpha leak is just, I mean, there was a 20 here, but I think a big piece of it's just kind of following what you do, Sam. I mean, and it might not be investment advice, but you've been early to so many trends. Frax has always stayed on that cutting edge, and I mean, you guys have made concepts work, including algo stables that most people haven't been able to perfect of years of trying. So, I mean, just even having like your kind of vision into where the market's going is massive. So, always good to have you on and really learn from you and get to know more about the ecosystem. Hopefully, we get to do it again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate you. I will end the call now, but if anyone has any more questions or anything, hit Sam up on Twitter. He's always responding to people. Their Telegram is awesome, so you can also hit up the Frax team in there. I will roll the clip one more time just to remind everyone, no financial advice, but otherwise, goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
GM Anon, welcome to today's episode of Market Capping. Before we begin, I just wanted to remind you that I'm not your mom, and nor are any of the speakers on this show. Nothing you hear today is financial advice. You should be a big kid now. Make your own decisions, do your own research, and assume every crypto coin you buy will result in complete losses. If you ever plan on holding anyone other than yourself responsible for your choices, please navigate.
Oh shit. I also forgot to mention, I think Small Cap and Sam are gone now, but there's a couple of people here, and I forgot to mention, you should check out Anata NFT. Quick update on that is we have just released breeding. I just saw a message that said, oh, I should tell you all about this, so I'm just going to quickly do that. I don't know who's left, but we have just released breeding. So details on breeding are here. Oh, and we did a Gainsey honorary, which is freaking sick. But breeding details are here. So if you have an Anata, you can find another holder and you'll be able to opt in to breed with them. and the outcome will be a little chibi, which will be one of the cutest ever, highest quality NFT airdrops you've ever seen. The faces will move, the eyes will be extremely expressive, there'll be lots of expressions, but as you can see with my Anata right now, I can't put my hands up in the air and wiggle them and be all excited. But once we have chibis, there's going to be full built-in hand tracking. So I can throw my hands in the air and wave at you and everything like that. So it'll be a really high quality, really unique airdrop. We'll continue to push forward what's possible with NFTs. Someone's asking how it works. Basically, yes, both parties have to agree to breed. So I'm gonna, as me, I will choose an ID of an Anata, and that Anata has to choose me too, and then we'll both get airdropped a little egg, and then that egg will hatch into a chibi once we've made all the combinations and our art team is hard at work at them. So that's freaking amazing. You can see some of the stickers they made here, and there's a bunch of details in this article, but also like general bullishness. On top of that, we're also doing a free profile picture project, which is going to be really cool, but I don't want to leak it. I think people are going to love that. And we started to explore VRM models, and there's still like 4,000 ETH in the treasury right now. So a lot of optionality, some really cool NFTs you can be on calls like this, one-click plugins to get on video calls and so on. But that's us, and goodbye again.